So I think we're still on an official move to the SEC in July of 2025, correct?
I believe so. I haven't heard I've heard rumors that they're going to push for 2024, but obviously those are rumors. But yeah, it does seem like 2025 is 100% going to be the year. And we play Alabama in Tuscaloosa next year, so I feel like they would have rescheduled that game if it was going to be 2024.
So we're
Yeah,
looking at playing 5 lame duck seasons. That's crazy to me that it would be drawn out that long. I would think, if anything, the SEC would put its foot down and say, we want to get on with the future, what we're going to be in the future, realign, do everything we need to do, not sit around and wait and wait and wait.
Well, and also they're going to be adding what, 4 teams too. So we'll play. There'll be one year where the Big 12 has what, 14
I
teams.
I love that.
I do too, actually, because I'm from Ohio, and if Texas goes to Cincinnati and plays, I'm going to the game. I think that would be really interesting. I think it might be the only time Texas goes to Cincinnati to ever play a football game.
Jason knows I love this because we've talked about it. I love awkward situations in football, in sports, and that would be an awkward situation. I like the mixing of the old guard, the two that are leaving, and then the four coming in, and them having to play each other. Because if anything, we're void of good matchups in college football, good non-conference matchups, and who knows when Texas and Cincinnati would ever schedule a game against each other, or OU and Cincinnati, or UCF, all the combinations of all those teams. Who have we really seen? We should see Texas and Houston play on a more regular basis. All those matchups. Not that we're going to see all of them, but I'm all for that. Plus the bragging rights argument of, do Oklahoma and Texas leave in style? Do they go to championship games their last few years to show, okay, we are the elite here? And of course, from a money and attention standpoint, brand name, nothing's going to change. They could both go 6-6 their last few years, and that doesn't change that they really took the league with them. They are 70 or 80% of what makes this league important. No offense to the rest of the league, but that's just the way it is. So that's not going to be changed by a couple mediocre years. But there is some kind of, at least it intrigues me, whether Texas and Oklahoma can leave the league and say, we put our stamp down, we put our foot down, and then we left the league. Or the Big 12 can kind of look at it, and they've got 1 year in to say, you didn't even make our championship game. And if that continues, to be able to say, good riddance, you couldn't even make our championship game. And then on the flip side, the same thing happening when Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC. There's going to be the old SEC guard wants to put them down, make them earn their stripes in the SEC, and wants nothing more than the SEC current members to beat down Oklahoma and Texas. So I'm going to be interested to see if that happens, or if OU and Texas come in and maybe surprise some people and seriously contend for an SEC championship right out of the gate.
I think the funniest version for the Big 12 and the worst is Texas and Oklahoma playing in that last championship game versus each other, or two of the new teams coming directly in, dominating the league and playing, because that would show like, wow, our league is weak. Two teams came in from the AAC and started playing our championship game, or Texas and Oklahoma are playing in the championship game, our two best teams, and they're gone. So it's like you probably want one of those teams in, and then one random team in, and then play each other, and the winner hopefully isn't either Texas or Oklahoma, is my guess what the Big 12 would want.
Well, to cut it down the middle, the best case scenario from a look standpoint for the Big 12 is for their old teams to make championship games. For what happened last year, just to continue to recycle Kansas State, Kansas, TCU, all those teams to be the championship participants.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, just taking a step back and just overall when Oklahoma and Texas go into the SEC, I was on here with you, Mark, talking about, I actually thought it was going to happen next year with everything that the Big Ten did with UCLA and USC joining the conference and the TV deal. I thought that they would find a way to make that happen, especially when you looked at the SEC asked Oklahoma and Georgia to reschedule their home and away game series that they had already scheduled. But I think to the point that Texas is still playing Alabama next year. Obviously, I don't think it'll happen next year. So yeah, you're right. It might end up being either 2024, 2025 at the latest. But I'm intrigued as both of you guys are of Oklahoma and Texas playing in this newly formed Big 12 conference for a couple of years and see what that looks like. I don't remember, from a historical perspective, but I don't remember Oklahoma and BYU playing all that much. I know that they played a neutral site game at Jerry World a few years ago, but that would be an interesting a road trip to take to Provo for, if Oklahoma ever traveled to BYU. So I think there's still a lot of intrigue in what this new Big 12 would look like to I think drown out some of the disappointment of maybe Oklahoma and Texas not moving to the SEC as quickly as some fans would like to see.
Fortunately for you, you don't have to play BYU because I have Taysom Hill running through my nightmares as a Texas fan for like 700 yards in the 2 games. And I don't even want to remember that. I don't want to play BYU again. That was not good times. You see, he's a great athlete. He's obviously a tight end now in the NFL, but that was very sad to watch.
Well, very similar for Oklahoma. Oklahoma actually, Sam Bradford actually when he hurt his shoulder against BYU initially, and then obviously came back against Texas and then was done after that. But so yeah, very we both share in some of the bad memories against playing against BYU for sure.
And another thing too about this conference realignment, like there are stories like that are going to be told. Like look at Colorado. Colorado was fine in the Big 12. They were pretty good. And then all of a sudden they moved to the Pac-12 and they are abysmal now. Like I don't even know if they're going to win a game this year. And there's like cautionary tales of be careful what you wish for. Like we may go to the SEC. We'll make more money. We'll probably I don't think we'll be terrible early on, but we may not be very good. And then that could snowball into being pretty bad if things don't go right. So it's like this balance. I don't know how it's going to go. It's going to be interesting. It's like I said, there's so many cautionary tales, and it's just going to be so weird having UCLA in the Big Ten. Like they don't fit that brand, neither does USC. I think Texas and Oklahoma is a more seamless fit entering the SEC because you look at the fan bases, they're more like SEC fan bases. Obviously, USC and UCLA have legitimately almost nothing in common with the Big Ten. So this is going to be an interesting wave of football coming forward for college football.
Yeah, and if the decision makers at Maryland, Rutgers, and Nebraska would be honest with us, I don't know what they would say 10 years later about their moves to the Big Ten. It certainly has not been good for Nebraska football. It's broken their ties to Big 12 recruiting footprint, Texas in particular, and kind of put them in no man's land to go for players. Mike Riley was a West Coast guy, so he drew lines to California, but not the best lines to lure away the USC and UCLA and Oregon recruits and everybody else that goes out there. And they've just been kind of lost in terms of where do we get our players ever since they lost the Big 12.
Yeah, 100%. And that could happen to, I don't think it'll happen to USC, but it could happen to UCLA, or it could help, moving into a conference that I think cares about football more and their fans care about football more. I don't think the Pac-12 is really pushed as a football forward conference. But you never know. It's going to be very interesting. Could be some teams that rise because of this. I really think UCF and Cincinnati could rise a lot joining the Big 12, especially UCF. People don't realize that their alumni base is like one of the highest in the country. And I think they have a real shot at becoming one of the best teams in the Big 12 right away.
Yeah, that was one of my big points about the ACC when they started to look vulnerable. That was my suggestion there was to go to Florida and try to get UCF if I was in the ACC, but that's gone right now. Yeah, I don't think there's any question. We've seen what conferences care about football. The SEC, without question, they are the headliner for caring about football, but the Big Ten, kind of an interesting mix of academia and just down-home football fans, coaches, players, and we saw that knock heads during the pandemic, like no other conference, where they were completely split on what they were going to do, and the players and the coaches and the fans that love football won out eventually. But the only thing the Big Ten doesn't have, they've got everything going for them, just like the SEC, except for enough players in their footprint. So that's kind of what they're fighting against. But Yes, it's interesting territory coming up.
Do you see any team other than, like, I could see Colorado going to the Big 12. Do you see any other team that would make sense to go back to the Big 12 or go into the Big 12?
Makes sense for the team, or makes sense, or the program, or makes sense for the Big 12?
I would say, which one, give an opinion on both. What do you think makes sense for the Big 12? And then which team do you think should try to go into the Big 12 if allowed?
Well, if the Pac-12 is in serious trouble and the Big Ten is turning down Oregon and Washington, those would be two phenomenal additions to the Big 12.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think they're
that
at the
would
top
be
of the
really
list.
good. Yeah. And I think if that were to happen, and then you could also somehow get Colorado and then whoever, I think the Big 12, I think that's enough to hang on and be still considered a legitimate conference, in my opinion, after the SEC and obviously the Big 10. But I think it'd be the third best conference, just like it is now, in my opinion. I still think it's third best conference. But the ACC, it's going to be interesting what happens with them. If they lose Clemson, it's over for them. If they lose Florida State, it's over for them. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to try to add. Obviously, Notre Dame has that weird contract with them, so I don't know how that all works out. It's weird.
There were a few people in the chat the other day, and I was trying to find what they were talking about, but they were saying that Kevin Warren's on record as to saying the Big Ten needs to be a 24-team conference.
And what do they have after USC and UCLA? 18, 16?
They're at 16.
So 8 more.
I'm going to guess that means going far west again and east. And maybe if he means Notre Dame, he means Oregon and Washington. And then maybe means some semblance of Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, or Clemson. I don't know what that, how that exactly, what he's got in his mind.
I know that Georgia Tech, if we're talking about cable rights 15, 20 years ago, that would have been a great market to have. I don't think that matters as much now, but like, I still think they can be pretty good, because if you can recruit that area, I know Deion Sanders' name has been floated out there. If he was the coach there, he could recruit the hell out of that area, and you could get really good players on the team. I don't know. Maybe that's too late for them. We'll have to see.
Yeah, no, that's very intriguing just to see what that could potentially look like for the Big Ten. To your point, I mean, what West Coast teams are they able to pluck if the Pac-12 looks like it's? I'm not saying it's in dire straits right now, but if it looks like it's kind of ripe for the picking, what does that look like between maybe a Big 10, Big 12 battle? And, I know that we've, over the last couple of years, we've heard some rumors about Clemson and Florida State kind of shopping around a little bit. That it seems like that would be a better SEC fit than it would be a Big 10 fit. And then, Notre Dame, as always, is the big wild card in all of this. Do they stay independent? Do they, you'd mentioned the little bit of that weird contract that they have with the ACC, related to non football related sports. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting and interesting to see how the dominoes fall.
Yeah, and I think we're in dire need of a commissioner. Like, we really need it badly. You can't just have this wild west. We've had all these changes, like 10 to 15 years worth of change in a matter of like 3 years. And there's a possibility where this could either enhance college football or it could destroy college football. And I will find out in probably about 5 to 6 years which one it did. Obviously, I don't like how some of these rivalries are going away. Like, if Oregon were to leave, Oregon and Oregon State probably won't play anymore, because Oregon State's just not the type of program that Oregon is. You obviously have Oklahoma going to the SEC now, and you're not going to have Oklahoma and Oklahoma State playing anytime soon after the next couple of years. So that's sad to see. But then you also have rivalries renewed. Obviously, now Texas going to the SEC, Oklahoma going to the SEC. They'll play A&M and Arkansas now more often. So you have rivalries there, but you also lose some really cool rivalries that I know only certain pockets of the country care about, but they still matter.